This is my lesson 8 reflection analysis video. So there are 4 prompts. So the first one is defend the perspective that the first step in the 5-step decision-making model is the most important. The first step in that is identifying the problem. So identifying and defining what issue needs to be solved and what goal you or the company, the business, the organization, what you want to achieve with this goal. So this is the most important step, because without this step there would be no decision-making model. You need to recognize a problem or opportunity. You need to gather the base information, and then you also need to clearly state the decision that needs to be made. So you gather all of the information to identify the problem in general. So with supply and demand, you need to identify that people don't want a certain product and they demand a separate one. You can gather the information of what's more popular and what's dying down, and then you need to decide, how can we bring in our customers, or how can we attract them back to this product that they don't seem to need, or how can we improve this product so that they can want it again. So honestly, without identifying the problem, you wouldn't make any decisions. You wouldn't get information, and you wouldn't study the environment around you. In any situation, any decision-making process, every day you identify a problem. Then you identify how you're going to solve that problem. It's honestly a daily thing, and it's most important because every day you come across an issue or a problem, and then you need to follow this 5-step decision-making model to solve this problem and make the decisions. So the second prompt is, in what types of work situations would satisficing be appropriate? So satisficing is a decision-making strategy where a person or group chooses an option that is good enough rather than the absolute best. So the types of work environments or work situations where this would be appropriate would be food, for the food service industry. You try and find ways where you can satisfy these customers. It doesn't always have to be the absolute best, but you can make it good enough so that customers are satisfied. Honestly, it's very rare where satisficing would be appropriate, in my opinion. They don't look for they really don't look for what's best. So they look at the minimum requirements, and then they go based off of that. So I guess you can apply this situation to like any homework problem. You look at the directions and you follow them, and then it's good enough when you submit it. You met the word count, you met the layout that needs to be satisfied for this work assignment, and you can put in bare minimum effort, and it's good enough because you follow the directions, but it's not your absolute best work. 3 occupations or industries where satisficing would not be appropriate. Number 1, in my opinion, would definitely be healthcare. So good enough decisions can actually risk the lives of these people and patients and anybody around them, honestly. So you need to, doctors, physicians, all those medical professionals, they need to carefully diagnose. They need to consider all forms of treatment, all types of surgeries or tests that need to be done, so that they can ensure that a patient recovers safely. They recover as best as possible. They get back to the life that they had before this situation. Any errors that are made, it can lead to injury. Any errors with medication and prescriptions, that can lead to many complications. A lack of help for the actual patient's problem at hand, and could also lead to death because of complications with other medication they're taking, or it does nothing but just harm the patient rather than help them. A second occupation where satisficing is not appropriate would be aviation. So pilots, the aviation industry, it needs these absolute best decisions so that they can get these passengers to where they need to go safely. You need exact calculations when creating an aircraft and determining the best flight path for getting from point A to point B. You have to go with the weather. You have to make quick decisions, especially when the weather is getting bad in a certain area. You need to have the absolute best team behind you so they can tell you this is where you need to land to avoid any tragedies or any complications, especially on the flight path. The last one would be civil engineers, in my opinion, because when building something, you need exact measurements. You need to have exact calculations. You can put up 4 walls, but if they're not exact, they're all going to be different heights. You can put up 4 windows, but if you don't have the exact calculations, they're not going to fit. You need the absolute best and strict procedures and calculations and expectations when building anything. Because especially in Florida, with the weather, you need it to withstand winds of up to like 100 miles an hour. With hurricane winds, it blows all sorts of directions. With the rain, you need to have shutters on homes. You can't make a house out of wood. It will blow away, and these people will have lost the one thing that they thought would keep them safe. Satisficing in these 3 industries is absolutely not appropriate. It's unacceptable because this is livelihood. And these people in these different industries need to understand livelihood needs absolute best decisions backing them, and they need exact calculations, exact research, anything to make it worthwhile, especially for patients and passengers and homeowners and people that are living in these homes, taking these flights or going to these hospitals. The next prompt is discuss the relationship between creativity and innovation. So, innovation is the process of turning creative ideas into practical applications. Creativity is generating original and useful ideas. Is it possible to innovate without creativity? No. You need these creative ideas. You need these fun, spur-of-the-moment ideas that come right off the top of your head when somebody asks a question. Because without that, you're not getting anywhere. You're following everybody's path, and you're not making yourself any different. So, when innovating, you need these ideas to create new products, to perform services or processes so that it will distinguish your company, your business, your organization, who you are from your competition. You can't make a bottle without an idea of a bottle. Everybody makes bottles. There's Stanley, there's Awala, there's all these different companies that are making these insulated water bottles. But without innovation, they're just copying each other. Each one of these companies have original ideas and useful ideas to make them different from their competitors. They have different designs, they have different setups, different colors, all sorts of things that will make them different, and then they all have different reviews. So, is it possible to be creative without innovating? Absolutely. You can have all these fun ideas. You can come up with new ways to build a house, create a water bottle, or come up with new anything. But you don't need to innovate on it. You don't need to act on it. You don't need to turn it into a practical application or a new product, new service, or new process. Because you're just imagining and you're inspiring yourself, and you're just using critical thinking to think in these new ways. So you need creativity to innovate, but you don't need to innovate with just creativity. That makes sense, but like, you can be creative without innovating on it, but you can't innovate without being creative. And then the last prompt: under what organizational circumstances would you choose a job candidate who exhibited creative potential but lacked practice creativity experience over a candidate who had worked in an environment where opportunities to develop practice creativity were extensive, but who exhibited less creative potential? You would hire somebody with strong creative potential if the organization is a startup, if they're continuing to grow, they're flexible. The company would need to value fresh perspectives and original thinking when you are hiring for creative potential. So it gives them the room to provide an opportunity for learning, for experimenting, for developing these new ideas and new ways of thinking and new creativity. But it would be more of a small business, a startup, or a small department, maybe for marketing. Because when you have these fresh perspectives, it changes the game, especially when you're hiring younger, for meeting that younger audience. It's encouraging risk taking rather than staying strict on the procedures and expectations. So you want original thinking, you want new perspectives, you want creativity, but you don't necessarily want immediate results. That's especially important when you're hiring creative potential, because you're looking for new ideas. You're looking for a new personality in a way. You're looking for new. You want a different look on things. On the other hand, under what organizational circumstances would you choose a candidate with obvious practice creativity skills over someone with creative potential? So, you would hire someone with proven creative experience when you need an immediate output. So, when you're under a tight deadline, or when the company is stable and they already have everything set in stone, they're not willing to move anything around or change anything because they're not looking for new ideas. They're not looking for a separate perspective. They're not looking for fresh eyes, as they say. They're looking for immediate creative output, and they're looking for someone to get a project done on a tight deadline, or who is willing to get a project done on a tight deadline. Also, creativity with established systems or regulations. That's what the job would require when they're hiring, with the proven creative experience rather than creative potential. So when you have the experience, you've already shown that you know how to work with this company. You know how to brainstorm with this type of company. They also know an organization. They know how to work with that organization when they value efficiency or reliability or results rather than taking the time to experiment, like with the creative potential. The types of industries or departments could be marketing or design or production roles. I know I said that someone for creative potential could be used in marketing, but also somebody with the creative experience would be essential in marketing because they know how to market to their audience. They know how to meet these production expectations, and they know how to design it the way that the company would prefer, and they're not going to stray away from that. They're not going to try and create something new without knowing the business. So they already have the experience of creating these ideas and putting it on paper. They're not experimenting. They're not taking risks. They already know what they're supposed to do, and they're going to do it the way that the structured environment allows them to. Thank you so much for listening. Bye.